In this video, we uncover the heartbreaking story of Sierra Lamar, a vibrant 15-year-old girl who vanished on her way to school in a quiet California town. 2014 would have been Sierra Lamar's last year of high school in California. There was a seat at the event set aside for her, but she didn't get to share such an important moment with her family and friends. She lost her future because of one man, and he will pay for it all his life. Investigators were desperate to find answers in this real-life crime case, and they were doing everything they could to gather enough evidence to catch this person. As luck would have it, a strange turn of events finally gave police the answers they searched for. Before we dive deeper, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I always love hearing from viewers around the world. And if you're into true crime cases like this one, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an upload. All right, let's get back to the case. In 2014, Sierra Lamar moved from Fremont to Morgan Hill to live with her mother, Marlene, and Marlene's boyfriend. Sierra wasn't excited about moving to a new area, but she was doing well in school and was a cheerleader. People say that Sierra could make anyone laugh. She got along well with the other kids at her new school and was very friendly. She started making friends almost as soon as she started at So High, and soon her social life was booming. Without a doubt, Sierra was having a great time. Sierra and Marlene always got up at the same time, which was 6 a.m., then got ready for work and school. Every morning, Marlene's boyfriend would leave the house for work before them. On Friday, March the 16th, 2012, it was no different. Around 7:15 a.m., Sierra would walk to her bus stop, which was just down the street from their house, while Marlene went to work. She would get on the bus in 10 minutes. It's interesting that this bus stop wasn't marked because Sierra was the only student who got picked up there. Sierra would usually get home long before her mother did in the afternoon when the bus dropped her off. This meant that every day when Marlene got home, Sierra would already be there waiting for her. The morning was pretty much the same as any other, but the afternoon was very different. That's because Sierra wasn't there when Marlene got home from work. It was very unusual for Sierra to not go home when she was supposed to. Marlene decided to call the school and Sierra's friends right away to see if they knew where she was, because this wasn't like her to do. They told her she wasn't at school that morning, though, and Marlene started to worry right away that something was wrong. Sierra would have told her mom not to expect her home that afternoon if she had plans with friends. But she hadn't called or texted any of her friends to let them know she had plans. Her mother started to freak out when she wasn't doing what she usually did. She called the Santa Clara Sheriff's Office to report the person missing, and luckily, they took the case seriously. The sudden disappearance of Sierra was quickly looked into, and the first thing that was done was to check her social media accounts. She put a picture on one of these accounts around 7 a.m. It was found, and 10 minutes later, she texted one of her friends. As described in the text, they decided to meet at school before class to trade makeup and homework. This wasn't a very exciting or unusual plan. Now, it's easy for me to think that police are often asked to look into cases like this, only to find that the missing person skipped school that day. But Sierra didn't seem to have any such plans because her clothes and school books were missing from the house, which showed she probably left with them. As she had plans to meet up with at least one friend at school, police chose to talk to the bus driver who was supposed to pick her up that morning. But this is where things went wrong with the case. This morning, Sierra wasn't at her normal bus stop, according to the bus driver and the students who were used to seeing her get on the bus there. It looked like she had disappeared into thin air. At this point, though, her case was just being looked at as a missing person because there was no proof that she had been harmed. As the area search did not turn up any hints, investigators chose to do another search with the help of a K-9 unit the next day. Along the path Sierra took every day to get to the bus stop, the dogs followed her smell. But about halfway there, her scent stopped. The police were very worried about this because it meant that either someone picked her up that Marlene didn't know or she was taken against her will. At first, the case was just about a missing person. Now, it had changed into a possible kidnapping case, but there was still no proof to follow up on. On March 17th, a search and rescue team sent by the nonprofit Class Kids Foundation did another check of the area. This time, things were different. Sierra's cell phone was found abandoned in a field not far from her regular bus stop, which was a hint found by searchers. The unmarked bus stop was only a short walk away. The cops had all the evidence they needed to know that Sierra did not just disappear. When the cops got Sierra's cell phone back from the field, they sent it in for a full forensic analysis. The next day, while they were still waiting for the results, even scarier proof showed up. Sierra's purse, school books, and clothes were found hidden in a shed less than 2 miles from their home. There was no doubt in Marlene's mind that her daughter had been hurt, but she tried her best to stay positive. The clothes were highly dirty and smelt like urine when they were checked. Marlene's mind was beginning to form a gloomy picture, one that no parent really wants to think about. Sierra was taken hostage, and her cell phone was thrown out of a moving car, according to the proof. The things she owned and the clothes she was wearing seemed to have been dragged through the dirt before they were hidden in the shed to avoid police. Still, no one knew where she was, so DNA samples were taken from everything that was found. When the results came back, they showed that Sierra's clothes had DNA from other people on them. They were sent to CODIS, which is the National DNA Archive. The DNA on Sierra's clothes matched that of Annalie Garcia Torres, a 20-year-old guy who lived about 7 miles away from Sierra's house. This was the first real breakthrough in her case. For 24 hours straight, the police kept an eye on him while they looked at CCTV footage of the places they thought Sierra had been that morning. At this point, they learned that morning, a red 1998 Volkswagen Jetta had been seen going around Sierra's neighborhood. When it was found out that Torres drove the same make and type of car, it was taken away as proof. It was clear he had something to do with Sierra's disappearance after his car was checked. Torres was sure that he had never met Sierra and had no idea what had changed her. But despite his protest, he was arrested and charged with kidnapping and claiming Sierra's death, even though there was no proof for either charge at this point. As you might have guessed, Torres said he wasn't guilty. After all that had happened, you can only picture how upset Sierra's mother and friends must have been. Not only had disturbing evidence been found, but they also didn't know where Sierra was, if she was still alive, or what happened to her after she was taken. The prosecution had to rely only on circumstantial proof that had been found because she hadn't been found yet. But even so, they pushed for Torres to get the worst sentence possible, the death penalty. It was even worse because there were no witnesses who could say one way or the other. The police couldn't find a gun in his car or on him, and since an autopsy couldn't be done, they didn't have much evidence against him. No matter what, they kept going and told the court that Torres had done the crime and that he did it for reasons. In order to prove this, they showed answers he gave during questioning that were even though the questions they asked him weren't. It wasn't just a theft because Sierra's clothes had been taken off and nothing valuable that she had on was shown to have been taken. The money for lunch was still in her purse. If someone had robbed her, they would have taken the purse and thrown it away after taking what they wanted from it. But that wasn't the case here. After hearing this, the court was told that Torres's car had been seen on security cameras near Sierra's house and in the area where her things were found. It was almost certain at this point that he was the one who took her. He most likely knew more than he was telling. Having said that, we do have to say that this proof was pretty weak at this point. It would be very hard for prosecutors to convict a man because they didn't have much proof against him other than the fact that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time and some brief comments he made while being questioned. If they wanted to lock this man up, they would need a lot more than this. Lucky for them, their wish was about to come true. Detectives knew that they had to keep looking for Torres even though the evidence they had against him was at best weak. That's when they found it. The cops searched Torres's car thoroughly and finally discovered something, a rope in the trunk. Toxicology tests showed that this rope had small amounts of Sierra's DNA on it, even though Torres said he didn't know anything about her. Why was her DNA in his bag if he had never met her? He said he had a good reason not to have been there that morning. He was on a fishing trip when Sierra disappeared. But right away, the prosecutor said there was a 5-hour difference in the story, in which it would have been easy for him to kidnap Sierra, commit the crime, and then get rid of any proof, even her body. Even though it was only a hint, all the proof pointed to Torres. This included the DNA that was found on her clothes, which turned out to belong to him. But now, things start to get, well, weird and gross. You see, Torres also had a reason for that idea. He said that early that morning, he had been taking care of himself by driving around in his car. He told her that after the crime, he threw the used tissue out of the window. The tissue must have fallen on Sierra's clothes, which then put his DNA on her clothes. There is a big problem with this story, though. The cops never said what kind of DNA was found on her clothes. In that case, how did he know what kind of body fluid it was? As the hearing went on, more and more of Torres's dirty and upsetting past came to light. He had a history of hitting women. In the past, 3 other women, an 18-year-old, a 46-year-old, and a 36-year-old, all said he tried to kidnap them while they were sitting in their cars in a parking lot. It was during those times that Torres worked at a nearby Safeway store and tried 3 times to kidnap women in the parking lot of that store. All 3 of these attempted kidnappings happened about 3 years before Sierra went missing. This makes us wonder if he ever did any other successful kidnappings that were either never reported or never linked to him. It makes you think a lot. Any way you look at it, a crime lab carefully examined a stun gun that was meant to be used on one of the victims during an investigation into one of those attacks. Inside, they found a battery with Torres's fingerprints on it. The prosecution said this was proof beyond a doubt that he was the one who did it. His defense said that even though none of the women could pick him out of a group, Torres's fingerprints were likely on that battery because he worked at Safeway and often put battery packs that had been opened back on some shelves. But let's be honest, this was a pretty long shot. Torres's lawyer also said that no one had been able to prove that Sierra was dead or that Torres had anything to do with her disappearance, since the evidence that had been looked at so far besides the rope, DNA, CCTV footage, and history of violence was only weak. It was clear that Torres's defense team was running out of options, but by no means is the story over yet. For Torres's defense, they asked the court to think about the chance that Sierra had just run away from home because she didn't like moving to a new area and having to get used to a new school environment. Besides, this idea did have a small amount of truth to it after all. A teacher from Sierra's old school was called to the stand to give evidence. She said Sierra had gone back to her old school once to hang out with a friend, but she was only there for 5 minutes. This took place a few weeks before she disappeared. What was to say that this couldn't have happened again? Maybe Sierra had chosen to run away for good this time, or even worse, something bad had happened to her while she skipped town to go back to her old school. The Sierra's defense team said this showed how much she wanted to get back to her old life and move back to her hometown with her old friends. Even though this made some sense, there was no real evidence to support the idea. It was just a guess. Sierra had never told her mother or her friends that she wanted to run away. However, the defense had a reason for that too. Next, they wanted to make Sierra's character look bad, so they said she might have had ties to organized crime. In order to support this theory, Sierra's defense team called some of her old school friends to the stand. They reluctantly admitted that she had occasionally used illegal drugs. One of her friends said that the day before she left, she texted her that she was excited to get back to Fremont and take pills again. It didn't look good. Both she and her friends agreed that she was sad about having to move, but they never thought she was going to run away because she could still visit them whenever she wanted. After these facts came out, Sierra's defense team said that she had been kidnapped and killed by drug sellers in the area, since she would have had to deal with them to get the drugs she used. This idea makes a lot of sense, but it was much more possible that she got the drugs from someone who had bought them from a dealer. But the defense had to come up with any weak ideas they could, because the evidence against Torres was so strong that they couldn't be argued with. Their thoughts on the evidence gathered at the different places where Sierra's things were found were more proof of this. They said that the hair on the rope found in Torres's car wasn't in the pictures of the evidence, so it couldn't have been there when the rope was found. Basically, they were saying that the cops had put the evidence in the back of Torres's car. At least, that's how I understand it. Then they turned their attention to the sheriff who was involved in the case and said that when the rope was found in Torres's car, it was kept as evidence but wasn't booked in at the police station right away, as is usually done. Inadequately sealing the bag, it was left overnight in the sheriff's garage before being taken to the station the next day. This meant that cross-contamination could have happened, making the DNA useless. One more thing they used was the fact that 9 pieces of hair were found in Sierra's clothes and put in an evidence bag. But when that same envelope was checked later, one of the hairs had mysteriously vanished. They asked the court to throw out all the DNA evidence that had been given up to that point, because this made it look like the evidence had been handled badly. Next, they told the court that there was a witness who had seen something strange that morning that hadn't been talked about before. She told the police that she saw a brown car pull over to the side of the road near where Sierra usually got on the school bus. They said that since this tip wasn't properly followed up on, it was possible that someone else had taken Sierra, so it couldn't be proven beyond a doubt that Torres was to blame. Since I want to be honest, I have to say that things were not looking good for the defense. All of these things were, without a doubt, very good. I believe everyone can say that Torres had something to do with it. However, these theories were not looking good, and it looked like Torres might be freed. The defense then turned its attention to other charges against Torres, especially those related to the other 3 kidnapping attempts. They said that the sheriff who was in charge of Sierra's case had been a bad witness in a different case because he had messed up evidence there too, and the case had to be tried again because of his mistakes. So since the same sheriff was in charge of all 3 of the other charges against Torres, they asked that they be dropped. It was successful for them to change the case's focus from the sad fact that Sierra might die to the situation of their client. Of course, they didn't ask Torres to take the stand because the prosecution would have asked him questions that he might not have been able to answer without giving false information. The last thing they did was try to make Sierra look bad. According to them, she was an unhappy teen who liked getting high. They said she might be living somewhere and had probably just run away from home or gone on a bender. Their friends and family must have found these claims very upsetting because they knew they were taken out of context to fit the defense's story. It was their hope, though, that the jury would see Torres for what he really was, a criminal, and sentence him to death. Nothing had been found at this point that would suggest Sierra was still living. She didn't leave a note at home and didn't tell any of her friends that she was going to run away. Also, she had plans to meet up with a friend at school the morning she disappeared, so it's very unlikely that she just got up and left without saying a word. She also wouldn't have had a reason to throw away the clothes she was wearing, and leaving her phone in a field would have made no sense. It would have been silly to do that. Still, Torres's DNA was found on Sierra's clothes, and her DNA was found in his car, which was a fact that couldn't be fought with. Even though evidence was tampered with, forensic analysis made it clear that Torres talked to Sierra that morning and knew where she was for at least some of that time, even though he said he had never seen her and that they had never interacted. Now it was up to the judges to decide what would happen to Torres, who had been emotionless and quiet the whole time. The judges finally made up their minds after thinking about it for a long time. Torres was found guilty of trying to take the 3 women from the Safeway parking lot and of attempting to use a taser during those attacks. He was also found guilty of killing Sierra, which was good news, even though her body had not been found yet. There were still even stranger tricks the defense had planned, though, and I just can't understand this one. When it was time to sentence Torres, the defense suddenly said that there was a chance that he had been exposed to pesticides as a child. They said that these chemicals might have changed Torres's personality and actions, which meant that he couldn't be held responsible for the crimes he had done. Before he could say anything else, his mother, Laura Torres, said that he had grown up in a bad home with an alcoholic father who was known to have beaten him and other children. She said that his father was in prison for life after being found guilty of abusing a family member. She also said that this behavior would have been bad for Torres, who she called a responsible and loving person who looked out for his family after losing his brother to drug charges and jail time. But let's be honest, these accusations only showed that Torres came from a violent and illegal family background. In no way did this prove that Torres was innocent. It only showed that his other family members may have had an effect on him and led him in the same direction. It's not hard to understand that bad company ruins good morals. It was clear that the courts would not stand for it. After all was said and done, Torres got 13 years and 8 months in prison for trying to kidnap 3 people at the Safeway store. Sierra, on the other hand, was given a life sentence without the chance of release. After the sentence, Marlene talked to Torres and told him that he could still make things right by telling them where he left Sierra's body. Even though a lot of time has passed, Torres still won't say that he is guilty in this case. The father of Sierra, Steve, said that Torres also had daughters and that he couldn't understand how someone with children could think about ending the life of another kid. He finished a statement with, "After what he did, not saying, not telling where Sierra is and what happened. I hope it eats away at him while he's in there." People like Sierra should never have been charged, but this case shows that there are many dangerous people in the world who only care about themselves. To get some pleasure for a short time, Torres took the life of a young girl. If this wasn't bad enough, he could have saved her family a lot of pain by at least telling them where he hid her body, but he chose to stay innocent, even though it was clear that he killed her. Sierra's family said they will keep looking for her body until they find it. Once they do, they plan to bury her properly and give her the proper send-off she deserves. But for now, they are trying to deal with the fact that Sierra is gone while her attacker, a man who seems to be mentally ill, lives on. Thank you for joining us for this heartbreaking case. If you found this story compelling, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications for more true crime content. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.